Huh? Hello? What? What? I'm always wondering what. I have no idea what. I'm trying to figure out what, but what the heck? Let's dive into this video. I'm over here, I'm looking on video blog. Okay. Hi, this is Steve Keeter, the Classic Comics Man, talking at you from the Classic Comics Man channel. Is not around anymore, but I'm still the Classic Comics Man. And TheLoathlyDaddy, and that channel's not around anymore either, but Steve Keeter, okay? You can call me whatever you want to. Call me anything you want to, okay? Just call me something. It's okay. Why'd you call me? Don't say that. That's not nice. Oh, where were we? We're trying to start this video. Okay, here we go. Yes, I got all my teeth now. Remember I was missing a tooth over here? They fixed it. $4,000. I gotta, that's just not right. Okay. Where were we? Oh yeah. I had this video up. Here it is on VideoVlog. Steve answers 10 Beatles questions. Now my last video, I asked people to ask me more Beatles questions, or just make comments about Beatles, or make comments about their Beatles experiences during their life. And I included some comments but I forgot to include Suja's. That's Sue, up there in Canada. And so I promised Sue. Hi Sue. I'm gonna read your comment here. She said this. It's about I'll read it to you. I was on my way home on the school bus. This is about meeting the Beatles, or first discovering the Beatles in the early 1960s. I was on my way home on the school bus, and Love Me Do was playing on the radio. At that very moment I fell in love with them, even though I didn't know the name of their group. Shortly afterwards they were on the Ed Sullivan Show, if memory serves me well. Yep. It was on a Saturday night. That's true. It was 8 o'clock, I believe. I remember being glued to the TV set and my mom telling me that I lost my marbles. LOL. I had a similar response from my mom and my stepdad, who was a staff sergeant in the Marine. The Marines, that first appearance on Ed Sullivan, they thought I was crazy. Why am I having a bad hair day? Forget it. We're trying to read Sue's comment. Mom said she lost her marbles. She never understood the power of music. Bless her heart. When I got into Metallica and Apocalyptica, she asked me how could I like that kind of music. My answer was simply, Mom, it's a musical orgasm, plain and simple. Ooh, had to adjust my glasses on that one. The look on her face was blank. Well, blank. I think that was the moment that I realized she had never felt music. It was just background noise to her ears. That, or she never had experienced an orgasm. Look, folks, I'm just reading Sue's comments. Don't jump on me, okay? And I don't mean jump on me as some sort of a... Never mind, forget it. And she didn't know what the heck I was talking about. Sue, I don't mean to be ruining your comment. I just these things come to my head and I can't help it because I'm kind of nuts, I got a runny nose too, which has nothing to do with me being nuts. Okay. To this day, whenever I listen to heavy metal, I think of Mom and wonder how much of life's experiences she'd never experienced. Now this is actually a really good, kind of personal comment, and Sue, thank you for sharing that with us. She never experienced an orgasm. Now we're gonna, okay, that was about the Beatles, folks, and now we're gonna move on. Sue, I really appreciate your comment. That's a great comment, actually. I guess I'm in a zany mood. I should have approached this in a more sober, somber mood, but okay. Well, the thing is, we're on the Classic Comics Man channel, and where were we? I left all my there's some comics on the computer, because these days people don't just send you comics. They send you freaking PDFs of comics and stuff. So like I got this one here. Here's PFSZT number 44. Now Jim actually sent me a PDF of this. Jim Main. And we're going to get to this one in a little bit. And but I want to talk about this one right here right away. That's right, this is coconut water. It's good stuff. If you folks like, they call it buku in the Philippines. Buku means coconut. Excuse me, I got a little congestion here. But this one, Exciter Comics Funzine, which comes from Guy Sparkman. I got this recently, and I really enjoyed this. This is a great old-fashioned comics fanzine. Guy calls himself Captain G. You'll see that in his interview here with John Wright. He's interviewing John Wright, one of the publishers and writers of superheroes in the, well, I guess the classic age of comics fandom, which was, well, I don't know, I guess the early 70s. And there's some cover repros of stuff that John had something to do with, that John published or had something else to do with. He even created certain characters. So, yep. He did not create Gene Autry, but he had a Black Panther character. Looks kind of like the Marvel Black Panther, right? But I think his John Wright's version, John Wright, I think his version came earlier. Yeah, I see a glare on this page when I go. If I slant the camera like this, I don't see that much of a glare. But there are some drawings here, and some old reproductions of John's classics fanzine. But there's an interview here, and one of John's characters was John Wright's characters was Union Jack. And, yeah, I don't know if his real name was Jack or not, but yeah, he's like a British superhero. And yeah, so you know, Guy Sparkman loves old fanzines, and I do too. And he's got, you know, illustrations from old fanzines and things. He even calls this Exciter Comics fanzine, he calls it Exciter Comics Funzine. And that term funzine, the first time I ever heard that was coined was by Steve Shipley, and he was talking about his dynamite. Well, actually, you know what? Come to think of it, Steve got the inspiration for that from me, because I said I said dynamite, which is Steve published back in the 1970s, was a funzine, not just a fanzine, but it was a funzine. It was a lot of fun, and it was a zine, and the two things go together. That's for darn sure. Speaking of the 70s, I said that John Wright worked on these classic fanzines in the early 70s. This is not true. I meant the early 60s, okay? So he was, you know, around the time of Roy Thomas and Alter Ego and all the great comics fanzines of the early 70s that influenced Chuck Robinson, who influenced me, etc., etc., etc. Here we have a story, The Origin of the Black Bat by Guy Sparkman and Tony Lorenz. Tony being my comic book pal. And here's a story written by Guy Sparkman, featuring a new story of the old classic fanzine character. Who'd have thought, you know, that we comics fans who loved classic comics would one day have produced work on our own, that how crude and unpolished, however it was, today is considered by some folks, especially folks who read and appreciated, you know, the primitive endeavors that we produced many years ago. Some folks consider those classic now. It's classic in certain people's eyes, and we sure do appreciate that. You know, we've always been just great comics fans and just doing stuff that we love to do, and inspired by the comics that we've loved, you know, the classic Marvel and DC and Charlton and Gold Key and on and on and on comics, and that our own work is appreciated all these years later. That's really nice to know. And thank you, Guy, for that appreciation, and others like a Guy. But Guy, he actually reprinted a very, very old comic that I did many years ago. The very first story of my character Sunwing, although in quite a different incarnation. This was Galaxy Comics #1. And here's the cover. And I really need to prop this up somewhere where you don't keep seeing my shadow on everything. But anyway, if you read this old origin story, I can't believe he reprinted it. May 1972, The Origin of Sunwing. Now I redid Sunwing afterwards, and a year later or so I introduced a whole new version of Sunwing, quite different from this one. The one thing they have in common is that he was a superhero with powers, solar-powered superhero with powers derived from the sun itself. as long as the sun is there, he can store up enough energy to fly, and he can unleash bolts of fiery whatever at his enemies, and you know, he's got, you know, a costume that is kind of like armor that gives him protection and strength, and you know, that's my superhero, Sunwing. And you know, I've been doing it for many years, and there are some new Sunwing stories coming up. In particular, I want to mention that I'm planning to do I am going to be doing writing and illustrating, which is highly unusual for me these days after all these years, but I can still do it. And just to prove I can still do it, I'm going to write a new story of Sunwing, and Sunwing is going to meet and team up with the Beacon. The Beacon being a character created by Roger Ledbetter and David Henson back in the early 1970s, first featured in my comics. And was it an Om or Mantra? At the moment, I believe it was an Om. It was an Om. One of my early Om characters, one of my first characters. And even though I didn't write or draw, I did ink the first story, but and then the two creators of the character disappeared. And I haven't heard from them in 40 years, or 50 years, or however long it's been, a long time. So I continued the character for a long time. Other artists tackled the chores on that one. I wrote most of the scripts, but Steve Shipley, Don Marchinek did a great job on that character. Anyway, we're going to bring back the Beacon. The Beacon shines the spotlight on crime. The Beacon was a satirical, sort of tongue-in-cheek character to begin with. I put him into more of the totally satirical as I wrote the stories, but the first story was similar to Kirby and Simon and Kirby's Fighting American, inspired by that, I think. But anyway, all these years later, I'm going to bring back the Beacon, a total comedy character, and he's going to meet Sunwing, who is a serious superhero character, and this meeting will occur in the next issue, I think, of Possette, of one of Jim Main's fanzines, comics, whatever you call them, small press comics these days, but Jim's going to publish that, and I'm going to be drawing that, and it will be out sometime this year. Jim gave me a deadline of July. I will meet that deadline. I'm excited about doing it, and yeah, but boy, did I ever digress. We're going to go, this is going to be a really long video, folks. So going back to this old Sunwing story that I did when I was just in high school, May 1972, gosh, I must have been, I guess I was in 10th grade. And I used to read and write and draw comics in class when I should have been studying. Yes, I admit it. And here was the origin of Sunwing as it was presented then. Now, I've written a whole new origin of Sunwing since, and this one was naive in a lot of ways. It's all about, and here's a scientist who was kept captive in communist Russia. He says, "But Commissar, why is it so important for Russia to rule the world? How do we know our system is best? Why am I being forced to build this weapon of destruction?" Which would be the Sunwing armor. And yeah, let me hold this up so we can get the shadow. I'm still getting the shadow. What the heck? Can't we live in peace with the capitalists? I myself would enjoy being free. Commissar has none of that. He says, "What? You dare to speak such treason? Our way is the only way." Yeah, whack. Evil Russian villain. There was no collusion here, I can promise you that, folks. Look at our crude and unpolished and everything. Well, my artwork was extremely crude in those days, and it was before I was influenced. And Chuck Robinson came along, my mentor, who used to publish a comic, one of the great small press comic fanzines of the late 60s and early 70s. And Chuck came along and he even inked a page. And I had just met him. He was actually a teacher in the high school where I was a student. He was an English teacher. I met Chuck, and look at this page, and look at this page, and you see how much more beautiful the artwork is, how much, what's the word I'm looking for? Dense. Dense? No, is that the word? Maybe I'm kind of dense because I can't remember, but you can see there's a difference. And this is definitely nicer artwork because Chuck inked it. But then we go back to my crude artwork. Anyway, Boris Dovsky, the Russians break in and he flies out the window with his new costume. Yes, this is similar to the origin of Iron Man. No doubt an inspiration, no doubt. Now, maybe that's one reason I redid it. Not to mention that the anatomy was hilariously awful. So yeah, and then there's articles in here about pulp magazines with incredibly beautiful reproductions of pages and covers, and just a lot of great stuff in it. Exciter Comics Funzine, issue number 3. I highly recommend this one. It's a classic fanzine. Really, this is a true fanzine, and it's written by fans about fan topics. You know, it's about comics. And now we're going to get on to some other stuff because we're done with this one. I did mention David Brandstetter and the tribute to Stan Lee, and it was his first issue of a Tetragrammaton Fragments. David has taken over the chairmanship of the UFO, the United Fanzine Organization, and he hadn't skipped a beat. It continues as if Rob Imes had published it, Rob being the former publisher and one of the guys who really brought the UFO back when it had been kind of stale, kind of fading out, you know, but Rob brought it back with his enthusiasm, his clear love for comics, and his clear love for this group that's been going on for so many years. It was first started by Carl Gafford in the late 1960s, and I was involved there in the early days as well. And so, you know, it's good to see that the group continues with articles, this particular newsletter with articles by some of the members, and the membership is right here. If you want to study that, these are the current members of the UFO. As you can see, Steve Keeter is an honorary member. There's my address. If you want to send me some comics, send them to that address, okay? Yeah. So, Larry Johnson, one of my old pals, is still in the group. Jim Main is recently rejoined the group. Ian Shires. Alan Sissom. There's a lot of great people in this group. Sam Gafford, for crying out loud. His brother Carl started the United Fanzine Organization as the BPP, Blue Plaque Publications. There was a name change along the way. Tim Kelly, Roger Keel, all these guys, Jason Bullock, these guys have been around. These guys are great, and I'm honored to be associated with them. And I'm going to take a little break here, and we're going to continue with this incredibly long and ridiculous video. I've been promising this for a couple of months. I'm finally getting around to do it. So, back after this important intermission. I'm here to talk about FRANKENZINE. FRANKENZINE. This is on my computer. This is a PDF thing, a publication that my pal, our pal, Sam Gafford sent us. A beautiful cover here. Who did that cover? Who did that cover? Floyd Sumner, the Floyd Man. And yeah, we've got some articles here. What do we got? Frankenstein. It's all about Frankenstein. The entire issue is about Frankenstein. And here they're talking this particular issue about Jesse James meets Frankenstein, Frankenstein's daughter, with some stills. And you know, I saw this movie when it first came out on a double bill with Billy the Kid versus Dracula. Billy the Kid versus Dracula being the more, I think, at the time you were drawn to that one because it had John Carradine in it, and the great John Carradine, who played the Dracula, Count Dracula in House of Frankenstein and House of Dracula. But here he was, years later, and well past his prime, but he played Dracula, and it wasn't the greatest film ever made, but of the two films on this particular bill, that was a fun movie, though, I will say that. Jesse James Meets Frankenstein's Daughter was the more compelling. It was actually Frankenstein's granddaughter whom he met. And it was like a drive-in movie. These were like drive-in movies. So these were like considered throwaways movies at the time. And I didn't think much about it for many years. Although I enjoyed the movie, I didn't think, I never thought it was, you know, that important. It's not a classic. It's not Citizen Kane, right? You know, but many years later, Rock Baker, Skyrock Baker, has done an article where he talks about it and talks about the acting. And I do remember it was kind of interesting. It was actually like a Western film. For the most part, it was like a Western. It was a Western with horror and science fiction elements, and it worked well as a Western. Jesse James came across as a likable guy, not like what you would have seen in The Long Riders or, you know, Jesse James films that you used to seeing. He wasn't such a terrible guy. Apparently this was later in his life when he became a good guy and he was fighting against evil monsters. Of course. So yeah, so there's a very good article on that movie. Believe you believe, and this is one great movie. It was actually a good movie. It wasn't bad, and I enjoyed it a lot. Here's a guy, Cliff Beggars, Frankenstein in Bits and Pieces, and he's talking about the Aurora model kits of the Frankenstein monster. Yeah, I had many of these models. I had this one. Now, I didn't have the patience to actually paint the thing, you know. Here's an example of someone who actually painted it, and The Bride of Frankenstein, the cover for the model, the creature, Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. Wow. I like this one here. This one's gorgeous. The Frankenstein monster and the Bride of Frankenstein, and she's obviously repulsed at him, which of course was the end of the movie. Who did this? This wasn't Aurora. Jaeger. So you have to read the article and you get more information here, but other people did models. Now here's an illustration by John Lampert of the Frankenstein Jr. Frankenstein Jr. from the cartoon show. And there's an article here by Derry Bishop where he talks about Frankenstein Jr., the TV show, the cartoon show, and has a list of every single episode of the series, which was, I believe in the 1960s. And there were coloring books, there were cartoon or comic books and everything, and also a give-a-show projector series of slides devoted to this character. So a lot of great nostalgia in this zine. I remember Frankenstein Jr. and there was a lot in the 1960s. There came a time, I guess especially after the Batman TV series became popular, but there were a lot of superhero cartoons on TV in those days. Space Ghost and there was Superman cartoons. There were many cartoons, even the funny animal cartoons, Adamant and Secret Squirrel. So there was a lot of stuff on TV. There was like superheroes, and superheroes were big in the 60s, but only is aimed at kids, and you know, that's cool because I was a kid, and so I enjoyed these very much. What? Yeah? What? Huh? Yeah, it's dark. It's dark. Hey, I was spying on the neighbors. What do you think? They built another apartment complex over there. Let's spy on the neighbors. What do you think? Want to spy on them? Yeah, spy. Yeah. Can't see anything though. That doesn't matter. What does matter is that it's the next day, and I'm wearing the same shirt. That's because I want there to be continuity in this video. So I'm putting on this stinky, sweaty shirt from yesterday. All for again for the sake of continuity. Continuity is everything, right? If you write comics and stuff, you know this. If you write comics for the movies, continuity is everything. Marvel's done a really good job with continuity. They haven't blown it yet. If they do, and somebody can explain it away, I'll give them a no prize. Never mind. Forget it. Yeah. A no prize. Yeah, people who love Stanley know about no prizes. I never got one. Neither did anyone else. After all, it was a no prize. Well, what the heck. Great joke, Stan. We miss Stan, don't we? Well, I just got this one. Collector's Link from Alan Sissom. And I discussed Alan Sissom before because he does great work, you know. Excuse me, this one's a little, not even a digest. This is a mini comic size, so it's a mini mag. It's not a comic. It's an article zine. And it's got two great articles in it, and this particular issue focuses on science fiction and fantasy digests from way back and into the pulp days and the post-pulp days, and you know, up until right now there either aren't many or they're not, or there are none. I have to read this a little more carefully because Rob Imes has an article and Larry Johnson has an article, and they're detailing the history of science fiction digests. And you know, Rob talks about he first heard about them by looking at the History of Comics Volume 1 by Jim Steranko, which I believe was the only issue. Jim said that, you know, like, decided it was really hard to write a book, so he just left it right there. But he left you know, tantalizing illustrations and stuff from the old pulp mags and after the pulp mags. Science. What I'm trying to tell you is that that's what influenced Rob. Okay. And Rob talks about the magazine of fantasy and science fiction and amazing stories, which I remember, and Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine. And he's got a reproduction of Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine, which is interesting. But these are even more interesting. These covers from Amazing Stories, etc. Whoops! If I could just hold these pages still, I'm so excited, right? Beautiful artwork. There's a little bit of Asimov and analog and fantasy and science fiction. And I remember when these things were in the stores. And Ellery Queen's Mystery Magazine. So yeah, which Rob mentions as an influence. So here's the cover to Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine. Science fiction magazine, yeah. Number 1, and I either have or had this. It's actually, this is black and white, but it was red. I remember that well. The background was red, and I had that issue, and I read that issue. Red. So yeah, this is all very interesting to me. Larry Johnson's article, he talks about If magazine. And here he has a copy of If, November 1968, the first issue of this magazine that he bought when he was 14. The Vaughn Baudet cover attracted me, he says, and I was hooked. If magazine. Here's some more cover repros. So this particular little mini-sized magazine is a wealth of information on this sort of stuff. I remember Galaxy. And the showstopper of the entire book is this illustration of illustration by Wally Wood from L. Ron Hubbard's Tale Kingslayer from Galaxy, April 1959. Wally Wood was an incredible artist. I actually saw him at a convention one time. He was disgruntled about certain things. But man, what a great artist. God, the guy was terrific. He did terrific comic work, and apparently did terrific illustrations for these science fiction magazines as well. We're here to talk about Jim Main, my pal Jim, and PFSZT number 44, which he sent me as a PDF, but bless his heart, he also sent me, bless your heart, Jim, also sent me a hard copy of this. PFSZT number 44. Anyway, PFSZT's been going on forever and ever and ever. Jim is one of the finest small press publishers ever, you know, and I'm honored and proud to have him as a friend. And yeah, so here he is with the latest issue of his long running title. PFSZT goes way back to the early 1970s. And here's an appearance by Roland Austin. He's not either one of the people in this photo, okay? These monsters are not him. He's the artist, okay? And he draws great. He's a great illustrator. And we look at some of the talents in this issue. We got Roland Austin. Where are we at? Yeah, Roland Austin, Jack Bertram, Doc Butcher, Trey Boyle, Jason Bullock, lots of people. Don Fortier, now there's a name I haven't seen in a long time. Carl Taylor, Rick Williams. Jim makes a note that Rick Williams has been around in small press comics since at least the 1970s, and this is the first issue of the first time Jim has ever published any publication that has Rick Williams artwork in it. So us old small pressers, we come together sooner or later. We all meet sooner or later. It's one network, maybe not vast, but interconnected. And sooner or later we find each other. There's some text fiction here. Part 2 of Prisoners of the Ice Kings by Roger C. Keel, with art by John Lampert. And this takes place in the frozen north. It's an adventure. And the second part of this, John's artwork is quite nice here. Yeah. So that's cool. And we keep turning pages. Don't you love this? Really nice stuff here. If you go even further, you get this thing by Mike Maloney with art by Jack Bertram. It's One Night in Noir. And it's great. It's kind of like parody. It's kind of funny, you know. I don't know how serious he's trying to be here, but you know, just listen to the opening words of this thing. As I was lying there with 238 slugs in my chest, I was thinking, some days it just doesn't pay to get out of bed. This was one of them. It went downhill right after I had had my morning cup of coffee in my office, and she walked in. She was a dame like any other dame, but she was packing a .45, and she looked like she knew how to use it. Her looks were distracting with her long legs and long red hair, but I kept my focus on the gun. I didn't need her doing anything stupid. I had plans for later that night, blah 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 blah. A dame. Well, you don't hear many people using that term these days. You'd probably be crucified by the women's rights people, but it works within the noir setting. And if you understand and appreciate that genre, you know that it's all just for fun, you know. There's a gallery of artwork by various artists in here. Here we go. That looks like Vincent Price to me. There we go. And that looks like Carl Taylor there. Carl Taylor doing, what do we got? The Thing from Another World, only this time the Thing is the Thing from the Fantastic Four saying, it's clobbering time. Yes, indeed. And now we're going to move over to this part of the kitchen. Isn't this fun? We're just moving all around. But the big highlight of the issue for me was Comic Fandom's Profiles with the interview with Don Fortier. Ducky Don Fortier, the Duffel Foofnik, as he called himself, way back in the 1970s when Jim and I knew him. Don was one of our great pals and one of the old UFO members from the 1970s, and one of the pioneers of small press. Don published DFCFR, which is Don Fortier's Comic Fan Report. And here's a reproduction of one of the issues that Jim has reproduced here with all this news and information. This one from October 1st, 1995. Yeah, so he says the Comet number 4 is available from Larry Johnson. Radion number 4 from Tom Mason. And on. Steve Christensen. These names, some of these names we haven't heard in many years. He also reviews, what's this? Comic books? Aquaman number 1, Aquaman number 4. Talking about Aquaman here. Harvey. There's classified ads here. Classified ads from way back then. Comics bought and sold here. Where we at? Comics bought and sold 25 cents each. Superman issues 20 cents each. Yep. So, yeah, fascinating, fun to see these reprinted stuff, and to hear that Don is still around. And Don's been working in in APPAs and stuff for all these years. He hasn't been publishing small press, but he was in Kappa Alpha, Interlac, APPA LSH, and etc., etc., etc. And so yeah, Don was an old friend, and it's really cool that Jim was able to track him down and get an interview, and just to see how he's doing these days. And we're glad to hear that Don is doing great. So thanks, Jim, for tracking him down, and thank you for a great issue of PFSZT number 44. We enjoyed it a lot, and it's worth walking around the house discussing, that's for darn sure. And more to come as we move on to our next title, coming up here in just a second. Now moving on, not only did we lose the great Stan Lee this past year, but we also lost the legendary Steve Ditko. I mean, wow, Ditko. What can you say about Ditko? You can say so much about Ditko. You know, you think Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, you think the Blue Beetle, you think the Question, you think so many awesome, great characters that he worked on, and that he just, wow, Ditko. I mean, my introductions with so many other people was with Spider-Man in the early 60s, and I read those early Spider-Man comics, and that distinctive style of his, the distinctive, you know, the hands and the mystic stuff, the other dimensional stuff in Doctor Strange, for instance, but just his sense of design, his sense of just fantasy, his flair for the imagination. It was just, his imagination was boundless, and wow, what a great artist, what a great talent. Wow, the amazing Ditko. Jim Main also published Fandom World Volume 2 number 1 this past year, which is a tribute to Ditko. And here it is on my computer, because I don't have a hard copy of this, but I got a PDF, and so here we go with a cover that says it's by Mark Ammerman. But you know what? That looks like Ditko exactly to me. How did Mark do this? Maybe I missed something, but Mark, the cover is attributed to Mark Ammerman, and if that's him imitating Ditko, that's an awesome, incredible job. Otherwise, perhaps he pasted a bunch of Ditko stuff together. In any case, it's an incredible cover, and of course, this issue dedicated to the talent of Steve Ditko. There he is. That's one of the pictures you see of Ditko. You don't see too many pictures of Ditko. A lot of people have thought of him as a recluse. You just don't. He didn't release a lot of photographs, but here's another one. And Mark Ammerman writes an article here where he talks about being in a barbershop when he was a kid and reading Kanga and other Ditko titles from those many years ago, and how he first spent 12 cents on a Marvel Comics. Spider-Man was the first title he picked up, he said. It was by John Romita. So I guess he's saying here that he had to go back and check the earlier issues to rediscover Ditko, and he did. And somewhere along the line, he sent a message. He sent a fanzine to Steve Ditko, and he got a personal reply. Dear Mark, thanks for the fanzine. You know, and a few words here, and here's the proof. There's an article, there's an envelope, and Steve Ditko's return address. A handwritten response from Steve Ditko. So yeah, and there was Ditko on the Creeper, and on and on and on. Gorgo. Fantastic. So yeah, Ditko, this issue really you know, it shows off a lot of the affection that we the fans had and have for the great Steve Ditko. We're going to miss him so much. Will Murray contributes an article here where he actually worked with Ditko for a little while. He worked with Ditko and co-created Squirrel Girl for an Iron Man story. He says here, is that really Ditko's door? Could be. with a sign pasted on there, S. Ditko. And he says that Ditko wasn't so reclusive, that he was actually quite accessible. I guess that people were intimidated by Ditko and, you know, afraid to approach him. You know, he was like a legend, like this legend that was so, you couldn't live up to him. You couldn't approach him because you didn't feel like you were as good as he was. But this guy did. And he talks about the work that they did, and a little bit of work here, a little bit of a Ditko on Iron Man here, the illustrations from the stories that they worked on. Well, I like this one. Here's a drawing by Ditko of himself asleep in his studio with Doctor Strange hovering overhead, and then the real Ditko next to him. So, yeah. And then a lot of reproductions, some excellent, superb reproductions of Ditko's artwork over the years. From the 50s on up, perhaps from the late 40s, I think. But yeah, Ditko. I mean, it was so distinctive. There never has been anyone quite like him. Amazing Adult Fantasy. Gosh, what a great title that was. What a great fantasy title that was. It gave birth to Spider-Man. Before that, it was just one of the great fantasy titles ever. And there he is, the very first Spider-Man story from Amazing Fantasy, and some cover reproductions. The first appearance of the Sandman, Electro, and the Green Goblin. So many memories here, so many memories. So we love this guy, and we thank Gorgo, Fantastic Giants. I remember buying that one. Conga and Gorgo, two great monsters, and 64 pages of incredible Ditko artwork and stories. So yeah, thanks to Jim Main. Woo, I'm just scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. There's so much in this issue. You know, if you don't have this one, you really ought to order it from Jim. If you need the ordering information, send me, I'm still scrolling, folks. Send me your, just send me a personal message. When you see this video, send me a message, and I'll send you the ordering info so you can order a copy of this fantastic Ditko tribute from Jim Main. Okay, and yeah, I think we have one more zine to review, and we're going to get to that in just a moment. And here we go, pausing this camera one more time. Okay, friends, so last but definitely not least, we have from our great friend Larry Johnson, whom I've known since the early 1970s. He was one of the original UFO guys, but he's been a great friend for so many years to so many of us. And Larry Johnson, he's really, quite honestly, one of the finest talents, seriously, and I don't say this with any exaggeration or anything. I mean, he's really a great and prolific talent. I mean, the guy is so talented, and he's so driven to illustrate and to write, and he has so many incredible fantasy ideas. His imagination is boundless. And here he is with his latest publication, which is Random Access #2, and here we have it again as a PDF. Yeah, you can already see his distinctive style, a distinctive imaginative style. I mean, look at these, you know, eyeballs with wings, and the sun with a face or a star, and this guy, part horse, part man. I mean, you know, already you're seeing incredible stuff. And here was Larry, a picture of him in his younger days, in 1979, just turning 27, he says, and here he is today. And Larry, still writing, still drawing, hasn't skipped a beat in all these years. And he has some articles in here. He talks about how he taught in school, and he had a how to make a comic book class at a local art center, in which he described to other people. He delineated his method of doing comics. You kind of see it right here if you want to know exactly how he does it. You know, check out this actual issue. He goes into some detail. There he is with his partner Dan, and in New Mexico. And there's a lot of great pictures, artwork and pictures here in this issue. Larry's saying here his trip to New Mexico was a big influence on my art, and these are paintings. These are actual paintings. They look like photographs, but these are paintings that Larry did. Just great work. And Larry, here's this Space Cat, a cartoon, a comic by Larry. He goes on, here we have an article, The Comic Collector, where he talks about collecting comics over the years, and he shows some of the comics in his collection. And I like the way he asks here, says, how many comics do you have? People ask him. How much are they worth? And he said, how much are they worth? They are worth a lot of enjoyment and entertainment. That's it. It's not about money. It's about how much you've enjoyed these comics, how much you enjoy them. And I would give that same answer. I would say it's not about how much they're worth financially. Who cares? What they mean to you. When I grew up as a kid, reading many of the same comics that Larry read, I got such enjoyment. They influenced me so much, and influenced me as they did Larry and a lot of other people to do their own comics. Space Family Robinson here, which later became known as Lost in Space after the television series took off. Larry talks about the differences between the TV shows and the comics, and the comics were all really quite a lot better than the TV show. Early Spider-Man, so he's showing off some of his collection, and with comments about them. Metal Men, that was an interesting series from DC. DC really was pretty great at one time, folks. And here we go. Pablo Picasso dropped by one day. Talking about meeting Pablo Picasso in this particular comic strip, and on and on and on. And Zooey, he talks he reprints a story of Zooey. Now, Zooey is a character, a very unusual, highly unique character that Larry created, and that he did in the 60s. He did it for many years. He says that he did 72 issues of a comic featuring Zooey, that he started in 1966 at age 12. He reprints in here Zooey number 30 from October 1969. And here it is, and with added color, making it quite beautiful. I mean, this looks contemporary. It looks so distinctive. I mean, it looks, I mean, you can see a difference. Larry's gotten better and better as an artist, but yet, when you add color to these old drawings, it is exquisite. And just look at this. It's really quite beautiful. So, yeah, Zooey was a character who began as a human but was mutated into this little fantasy guy, and he had many wild and exciting adventures. And here he is underwater here. So yeah, this is a reprint, but well worth reading now. It's just as good as anything you'll find these days. Great job from Larry. Yeah, I mean, I'm in awe, and yeah, Larry, I'm a fan. Great to see this stuff, and great to see that you're still out there doing comics, and you far, outdistanced me, and my lazy butt. I haven't done that much over the years. I'm getting ready to do some new comic art and stories and stuff, but there's no way I'll ever be able to catch up. You're so prolific. And thank you for all the years and the countless comic book pages that we've enjoyed over the years. And thank you for this issue. This is great. Here's some pictures of New Mexico, some photographs. There we go. There they are in New Mexico, having a great time, and just a lot of pictures in here of this. There it is, and down, and down. Here we have a tribute to Steve Ditko. Yes, Larry's own tribute to Steve Ditko. He also was greatly influenced. I thought you could see an influence in Larry's early artwork, his artwork in the 1970s. I always thought I could see a bit of a Ditko influence. But Larry had his own distinctive style too. He wasn't like totally influenced by Ditko, but yeah, there was an influence. And like Ditko, this is a guy who never runs out of ideas. So yeah, and here he is, just showing his depictions, his take on Ditko comics and characters. So yeah, there you go. And then there's some random drawings. It is even titled Random Drawings by Larry to close out the issue. So yep, and quite beautiful stuff. And there you go. Random Access, a great issue from a fine publisher. And there's my fiance BB to close out this video. What better way could we possibly have to close it out? Here she is inside a hotel out there by Disney World. And yeah, well, was that enough meandering and talking and a lot of nonsense? I think I said some stuff that was substantial in here, and there was also a whole lot of nonsense. I rambled on a lot. This video, was it worth waiting for after 2 months of talking about this darn video? Well, I don't know. I enjoyed doing it. And alright, well, it's 2019 and we're still doing comics and stuff, and let's just keep on doing them. Let's do them for another 50, another 100, 150 years. We're going to live a long time, because with medical advances, we're going to live a lot longer than people in the past. So I expect we're all going to be here still doing comics 150, 200 years from now. And yeah, so that's all for now. Thanks for tuning in. This is Steve Keeter, the Classic Comics Man, the Loathly Daddy, bidding you all adieu, and I'll see you next time. Alright, bye-bye.